Hello, I'm Marc Brandt. I'm the former executive director of the Arc of New York and former executive director of the Sullivan County Arc from 1971 to 1982. And it's my pleasure to extend congratulations and best wishes to the Sullivan, Orange, and Dutchess County chapter on the 75th anniversary. And I began with the Arc of Sullivan in 1971, which was a little over 22 years from the formation of the Arc of New York. And Sullivan County was one of the first chapters to join and help form the Arc of New York, and has really a very extensive history. And while my 11 years at the Sullivan Arc certainly involved me with relationships with the Orange and Dutchess ARC, most of my remarks will be contained to the Sullivan County chapter, which for 11 years I was the executive director. I notice above me there's a picture of Ruth Bennett, who was the first president, and she was very involved as a parent and joined the Arc of New York when it first started to form in 1949. And when I became the executive director in 1971, Ruth was the president. And I remember we would talk almost every day, and every day when I would call her, she would get on the phone, she'd say, "Good morning, Mark, hold on for a second," and she would disappear for a couple of minutes, then come back, and she said, "I'm sorry for the delay. I had to look in the newspaper in the obituaries," and she said, "If I didn't see my name in there, I know I could continue on." And that's exactly what she did for all the years. She really brought to Sullivan County a great deal of her wisdom as a family member and as a parent. And you know, when I joined the Arc in 1971, it was a relatively small agency, as was most ARCs in the state of New York. There were very few chapters at that time. I think there was around 16 or 18 chapters back in 1971. And it was very small. And I remember the meeting that I went to, I was interviewed by two family members and a professional who was on the board. And they interviewed me. I got a call a couple days later saying they offered me the job, and they wanted me to come to the general membership meeting. And I went, it was in May, I believe, of 1971. It was in where the Monticello the police station is. There's a hall above there, and they had a meeting. And I remember sitting next to the president of the chapter at the time, and the meeting started, and somebody got up and made a motion to re-employ the former executive director. And I said, "What's going on?" And the president at that time turned to me and said, "Don't worry, I counted the votes, and it's going to be 7-5 in favor of you." And certainly when the time came and the board voted, the vote, sure enough, was 7-4 for me and 5 against. My wife at the time, who was pregnant with our first child, turned to me and said to me, "Are you sure that this is going to be a good job?" And I turned to her and I said, "You know, I think this is going to be one of the most fantastic positions I've ever had." And for 11 years, I always felt that way. And my memories of the organization are still very strong, even though it's almost 50 years since I was here. At the time in 1971, the field was really very young, and it was just getting started. And as I mentioned previously, there were very few chapters of the Arc of New York at the time, and there were very few programs. The Sullivan ARC, when I became executive director, only had a very small school program It had around 35 children, and it was located in Parksville, New York, in an old school building that the Liberty School Board donated to the ARC. We were very small. We had relatively little funds. I think the budget was around $80,000 at the time. And slowly but surely, from 1971 to 1973, we started to grow more and more. And we started a sheltered workshop, I believe it was in 1973 or 1974. And we needed a place for it. And we rented some space in Liberty, New York, but we were rapidly outgrowing it as more and more people were found to need the service of a sheltered workshop. So we were looking for a larger building. And the Sullivan County Community College had their programs on the campus of the former South Fallsburg School, and they had a big red school brick building, several thousand square feet, and around 5 or 6 buildings that were put up to house the hotel technology program and the other offices for the college. The college built a brand new campus in Loch Sheldrick, and I knew that facility was going to become vacant. But the price of that facility was hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I knew we couldn't afford it. So Elizabeth Berman from Liberty, New York, who was very involved, she was the head of the board of directors of the United Cerebral Palsy in Sullivan County, but she was a good friend of the organization and on our workshop committee. I went to her and we talked, and she said, you know, that the former Sullivan County campus, the big brick building and the buildings above, would be ideal. But I said, Betty, we can't afford the money. She said, every one of the 9 school board members I know personally. Her father owned the Gibber Hotel, and she was very involved, and she was born and raised in Sullivan County. And what she did was, for 9 straight weeks, she had a dinner at her house in Liberty, invited me over, and each of those 9 weeks there was a board member of the Fallsburg School District who attended. And we had a conversation, we talked about the ARC and what we're doing, and somehow the use of the campus came up. And every one of those board members became very eager for the Sullivan ARC to take it over. But I made it very clear that we really had no money, and the state had no money at that time. Well, the school board had a meeting a few weeks later, and on the agenda was the turning over of the South Fallsburg campus to ARC. And when it came time for discussion, I made a brief presentation, and each of the board members talked at once and wanted to make the motion to pass it. They all thought it was their idea. They gave the ARC the Fallsburg campus for $10,000. We had to give them $1 down and $9,999 for the next 10 years to be paid. And that became our campus. And throughout the history of my tenure with the agency, and throughout the history of the Sullivan County ARC for 75 years, the Sullivan ARC has led in many ways the field in many different directions. It was the first ARC, it was the first agency in New York State to have a day treatment program. We started it here. It was our idea to do it. We researched it. We got into Medicaid funding. The state was going to sue us because they didn't think the developmentally disabled should be in the program. We were able to successfully argue our case, and the judge awarded us full rights to have the program. We had residences. We decided that at that time, when the state wanted to deinstitutionalize the population, there was a rule that 50% of the individuals going into a community residence had to come from the state institutions, the developmental centers. We developed a program that the Board of Supervisors of Sullivan County endorsed and agreed with, that we were going to take all of the residents that formerly were from Sullivan County that their parents had to place them in institutions over the years. I believe there was around 56 individuals, and the staff of the Sullivan ARC and myself visited the 9 or so developmental centers that had these individuals. We returned to Sullivan County. All of the 56 residents, actually there was 55, one individual we felt we couldn't handle. And each of the 55, we met with the family members, the Board of Supervisors endorsed it, even gave us some startup money to do it. And we returned to Sullivan County all of the former residents. Governor Hugh Carey recognized that as a major event, and he came to visit the Sullivan ARC. We gave him a tour of the buildings, and he was very grateful to the Sullivan ARC, and I got a chance to meet with him and to talk to him, and we had a good acquaintance all throughout the time until his death a few years ago. Also, we managed to provide, in addition to the day treatment services, we were able to start our sheltered workshop, and we had the day treatment program at the time, and the community residences, and we formed a guardianship program, which Erica Berman, who now is the state guardianship coordinator, helped begin in Sullivan County. So the Sullivan County ARC had a full range of services and programs throughout the years, and we were able to help hundreds of individuals, and today for the 75 years it has continued to provide the services and support to all individuals with developmental disabilities. And although we handled many individuals, we never forgot that each individual was an individual. And in the case of one person, an individual by the name of Raymond Dunn, who was very severely developmentally disabled, we were able, he resided at home in Rock Hill, New York, with his family, Carol Dunn. He was able to be kept out of the developmental centers by her support, and we were able to get emergency respite care funding for Raymond, and staff of the Sullivan ARC provided life support for him until he passed away a few years ago. So for the Sullivan ARC, and for the Dutchess ARC, and for the Orange ARC, these three agencies have really, I think, been a very strong and integral part of the ARC New York organization. And for 75 years, the Sullivan ARC, and then additionally Orange and Dutchess, have providing the advocacy and support to family members. And I know and personally feel that the next 75 years, while many of us may not be around to see it, that the 75 years are just going to be as strong as the first 75 years, with the kind of support that the Sullivan, Dutchess, and Orange chapter, through the administrative abilities of Regina and her staff, and of the strong board that exists within those three organizations to form one organization, that the next 75 years is going to be just as committed to the purpose and goal and the advocacy as the first 75 years. So I congratulate you, I wish you the very best, and I'm happy to have been a part of the celebration. Thank you.